Hi there, I'm back again with another review, and this time is for Chrysalis by Lincoln Child. This book is centered around a giant tech company who's about to roll out a new product that's related to virtual technology, and they also have products that are optical devices that are implanted for, similar to like pacemakers and things like that, but also for like medical devices that can remotely administer dosage of medicine. Um, in that way, the person doesn't have to worry about, for example, maybe having to use a needle. That product that's implanted would, give the proper dosage as needed. So, anyway, when the book begins, it starts out with two researchers who are in the Arctic, and they were talking, about what they were doing there, and randomly, the lady who was there was a man and a woman researcher, and she just shoved him into a crevasse, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is weird. So that was completely just a random first part of the story, and that didn't tie into the story until much later. So after that happens, we meet Jeremy Logan, who's the main character. He's an enigmologist who's a person who solves weird and unusual events or find explanations for weird and unusual events. So he's driving along and he's using one of the devices that's made by Chrysalis. It's an Omega device that syncs with his phone, and it's almost like a virtual reality type of glasses type of thing, and give like directions and stuff like that, but instead of through the phone, it's through the glasses. And so as he's driving along, he receives this call, and it's from, Chrysalis headquarters, and they're summoning him to their headquarters. Now, they didn't tell him what this was about. So on his way there, it's in his back of his mind, like, what's really going on? So while he's en route to their headquarters, we go into a different line of the book where this gentleman who's a director of a huge movie company, and they were discussing the latest installation of a movie that's coming up. So while they're having this board meeting, they were talking about this type of filming that they were going to be doing for this end part of the movie. So one of the executive producers had told him about this type of thing that he did, and of course he wasn't happy. So because of that, I was thinking to myself, maybe that's related to what happened next, maybe stress, or he maybe had a heart attack. So anyway, while he was there, he's really upset about what he was told, and he just fell over. And when he fell over, he fell onto a glass table, and of course that you know he crashed into that, and the glass broke, and of course it got a bit gory because of the glass shards. And so it was a gruesome sight that took place. So anyway, when that happened, one of the contact at Chrysalis received some kind of vague cryptic message, which was related to the death of this director. Now, this is, we later find out why Jeremy Logan is being summoned, because why would Chrysalis be receiving this message? But it seemed on the surface that that didn't really have anything to do with their company. So he was there to figure out what's the connection. Does it really have anything to do with that? And of course, they're worried about this because there's supposed to be a rollout of a new product. And if that rollout gets delayed, that's going to cost the company billions of dollars. Next, we have a gentleman who was, taken off from the in his airplane. He was, we later find out, coincidentally coming to the Chrysalis headquarters for something else. So anyway, while he's there, everything seems to be fine, and then all of a sudden, he's having issues with the plane, and that went downhill pretty quickly. And later, he died. They found the crash site, and he died, and they're looking into seeing what had happened. All right, so Logan and me as well, as I'm, going through the book, I'm thinking, well, this has to be something to do with the Omega device, or something to do with the devices that they're made at Chrysalis. So once this second gentleman dies, here this contact gets another cryptic message that's threatening, but they're not really asking for money. So I'm thinking this has to be some kind of money involved, but they're not asking for money. So the next thing that happens is that this, I believe she's a publisher, and she was in London for something. And as she was leaving her hotel, She received a call and then she was on the phone, and her assistant noticed that she had this weird look in her eyes, and then she just suddenly walked out into traffic and got hit by a bus. So she, in the process of Logan investigating this, had no implants or anything like that. So this was an anomaly indeed, because this is not related to the company now. So when the owner of the company gave him full rights to access to everything, because they do want to make sure that this, they get straightened out and this doesn't get public, or they can hammer out what's going on before the rollout. So, in the course of investigating this, he's talking to all the top scientists, and they're telling him that the Omega devices can't possibly cause anybody to die, because at a maximum, it's a small electrical charge, and in no way could it, possibly kill anyone. So later on in the book, after each person dies, they receive a text message, and they're finally later on in the book they're asking for something, for money. And of course, they're like, wow, who is this? They want to get, to the bottom of it. And there's also one of their top tech guys who seemingly had been tampering with some system of sorts in their it's a helix, or their storage facility that stores all the data that's collected and that's stored, and how they use in the devices. So he seemingly had been tampering with that, and they were holding him because they have this huge facility that the employees seem to live there as well as work there. And so they have him held there in a pseudo jail, kind of, because they felt like he was responsible for this. So while they were investigating this, it further developed into some kind of what it seemed to be some kind of corporate espionage, because one of their top scientists was also working with some other company. She was a very gifted scientist, but she was working on the side and funneling information to somebody else. Some we later find out is some kind of cartel, and they were timing the rollout of the Omega device to something else that they were trying to test. So this scientist who was involved, we find out later, was the lady who was involved at the beginning of the book, where she had pushed the other scientist off the crevasse and killed him. But the reason for that was because, I guess her third party customer had summoned her to do that, and the discovery that they made in the Arctic was used to, she used that to weaponize whatever it was that they found. And this was their way, basically, of testing whatever she had developed under the guise of it being a problematic issue with the Omega device. So this book really kind of scared me a little bit, just because of the fact that as technology advances and things get more wireless and remote, it's easier for example, a third party to potentially hack these devices and basically hold, patients or people hostage medically, almost like medical terrorism, because if somebody could hack these devices, people can just die. So later on, towards the end of the book, we find out that these people that she was working with, she had also recruited a few other guys who worked at Chrysalis. And so one of the device that was in question was one that was supposed to administer drugs, medical drugs, but instead they filled another chamber of it with a poison, which was how that publisher had died. And so when they got to the end of that, there was a lot of things that happened in between before we got to the end of the book, because then there were some killings that happened. It was a lot that took place in this book, but the main thing was trying to solve this problem so it doesn't affect the roll up. But ultimately, Logan was able to make the connection to figure out what was going on, and in the end, he had to go into some virtual reality device to try to undo some of the things that were done as a part of the sabotage that took place with that scientist and the third party companies who were trying to test whatever it was that they had discovered. So this book was very interesting. It is a bit longer than most. I want to say this. I listened to the audio version. I believe this was about 11 hours, but a very solid book as usual with Lincoln Child. He tend to write really, really good books. This one I'd give a solid 4.5 around there. Towards the end of the book, maybe the last 15 minutes was a little bit slow because once we figured out how everything all came together, and maybe it was just me, I kind of, lost interest a little bit after I found out once the mystery was solved and they had a little bit left in the book. I kind of lost interest, but overall, it's still a pretty good book. So if you have read or listened to this book, let me know your thoughts. Until next time.